Good morning. My name is Evan Slack. I am a senior at South Mech and a member of Providence and the youth group. I have been going to this church my entire life, and in fact, one of my earliest memories is of me thinking that the elevator in this very church would take me to God. I don't know why I thought this, but I truly did think that God was on the other side of those elevator doors. Looking back on it, it could have been due to my parents and Sunday school teachers always referring to the church as God's house. After reading Exodus 34:29 through 35, Moses, in a way, had his own elevator moment when he went to the top of Mount Sinai and spoke to God. After one particular time when Moses talked to God, he returned down the mountain to the Israelites with his face shining. His face was shining, not from getting a sunburn, but because of seeing God face to face. He had learned of the 10 Commandments and brought them down. The first 4 commandments were about our relationship with God, and the next 6 dealt with our relationship with each other. The Israelites were afraid at first when Moses came down from the mountain and did not want to speak with him. Therefore, Moses was shown wearing the veil in the scripture to represent how he encountered God and how this interaction had caused his face to shine, ultimately with God's will. When Moses came down from the mountain, he was doing the work of God by telling the Israelites about the 10 Commandments. This so-called work of God is our calling to shine God's light into the lives of others, even if it may be challenging, as it was for Moses with the Israelites. For me, facing God and having a relationship with God can look like encountering people who are different than you and how they can shine God's light into your life and give you a new understanding of the way the world works. During my time at Providence, I have gone on trips large and small with the goal of helping people, one of which was a mission trip to Haiti. During this trip, the adults would talk to women about microcredit loans to help them start businesses, and meanwhile, we would bring out durable soccer balls and play soccer with the children and teens. Then, we would give them the balls at the end. I feel like God communicated to me through these children by showing me how easy it is to get along with others, even if you have very little understanding of each other. Another way that I feel like I experienced God from Haiti was when we returned home to the States from the trip. When I came back from Haiti, I felt that God had shown me a completely different outlook on life. I was much more appreciative of the basic needs that I didn't have to worry about on a daily basis, and felt that I had a much better understanding of those who were different from me. Because of all of this, I feel like my faith became stronger. Having a relationship with God or doing things that would bring you closer to God can sometimes seem scary, just like how it was for the Israelites. But we have to remember that as scary as it may seem, a relationship with God will only help us. I know I will have to remember this as I go off to college in the fall. I don't know where I will be quite yet, but I know that no matter where I go, who I meet, or what I experience, God will always be there to show me the light and his face.
Good morning. Welcome to Providence United Methodist. My name is Mary B. Hooper, and I've been a member of this church since the day I was born. I've been an active member in our youth ministry for the past 7 years, and I have, from confirmation, retreats, lock-ins, and even sleeping outside of this very church. If you name an activity within the youth, I've probably done it. The scripture I focused on this morning comes from 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 12 through chapter 4, verse 2, where Paul is writing a letter to the people of Corinth. He talks about this veil that Moses had to wear when he spoke to the Israelites. This veil prevented the Israelites from experiencing the full extent of God's glory that Moses saw when he was on top of Mount Sinai. Now, when I read this, I was confused why Moses would want to hide something like that. After diving in deeper, Paul continues to tell us that it's because the Israelites' eyes have not been open to a personal relationship with God. But when God lifts their veil and they come face to face, the Israelites realize that God is a living personal presence and not just some chiseled stone. And now there is nothing between the Israelites and God, with their faces shining bright with his brightness. After thinking about this veil and how it impacted the Israelites' relationship with God, it makes me think about when my own veil was removed. Kind of like Moses, I too had a mountaintop moment. I remember it clearly. The first time I fully felt God's glory and God's presence was when I was just old enough to hike Roan Mountain in Tennessee. This mountain was about a 2-hour hike to the summit, and the view was breathtaking. This hike was no easy peasy walk. I mean, this was a hike. But that's the best part about it, because once you reach the summit, you are so exhausted to the point where nothing else matters but that view you worked so hard to reach. I was about 9 the first time I hiked it. After I got to the top, my only thought in my head was, God's glory is so beautiful. Wow, I was speechless. One might think I would experience this moment for the first time in the church, but for me, that wasn't the case. Don't get me wrong, I love this church. I love the people and all the memories I have here, and I've definitely experienced God within these walls. But I tend to get easily distracted, which can get in the way of worship, Sunday school lessons, youth group, etc. I get so caught up in my own head about worries with school, relationship, and work, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. When I was on that mountain, I was so speechless that all my worries and to-do lists just seemed to melt away. You could say my veil was finally lifted at that moment. Paul continues in chapter 4 by saying, therefore, since it is by God's mercy that we are engaged in this ministry, we do not lose heart. Even though my hike to the top wasn't easy and at many times I wanted to turn back, I still persevered and made it to the top. This is like our relationship with God, and the hike we take with him isn't always easy. What Paul is saying is that we shouldn't be so quick to lose faith in our hike when hardships come about. Today is Transfiguration Sunday, and our theme is facing God. On that mountain, I came face to face with God's glory, and my relationship with him has become much stronger since that day. I know I'm able to see his glory in all things, even when the road gets bumpy. In the fall, I plan on attending Auburn University and hoping to study biochemistry on track of pre-pharmacy. I know the next chapter in my life won't be easy, but I believe if I can keep transforming through God and our personal relationship, then there is nothing I won't be able to overcome. Thank you.
Good morning. Hello, everyone. My name is Seth Dunn. I'm a senior at Providence High School, and I'm in the class of 2022. I have quite literally grown up in this church. There have been so many Sundays when I have eaten all 3 meals here. I have slept here as a baby and as a youth. I've played dodgeball as a 3-year-old and participated in Nasty Wars since I was 4. I even know all the best hiding places and the ins and outs of this church. I have also grown up listening to the youth laugh as stories about me and my sister were shared by my mom for point makers. And as odds would have it, here I am today, and the shoe is on the other foot. But first, I'm actually supposed to talk about the Bible. More specifically, Psalm 99. Now, I've done much research into what this passage actually means and why it was selected for Transfiguration Sunday. And as many of you know, our former pastor, now Bishop Ken Carter of Florida Conference, and our own Western North Carolina Conference, is a very notable man who gave me great insight on what this passage really tells us. A good reference quote that I got from him was, "The Old Testament often says that God was with the people in a cloud by day and a fire by night. This was to assure them that they were not alone and that God was with them each step of the way, even in the wilderness and the difficult times. God is always faithful. Earlier, when we read the Psalter together, we saw phrases like, "The Lord reigns," "He is exalted over all the nations," and "He is holy." God is our King, the one in charge. Over the last few years, it's been very hard to see or believe that God is in charge. In all the chaos, it seems more like everyone else thinks they are the ones in charge. But Psalm 99 offers us more than just a statement about God as powerful and mighty. Psalm 99 also tells us that God is a lover of justice. We might think of justice as a term used when a crime has been committed, but in the Bible, justice means to make right. Making things right is more about being in a relationship with someone than it is to receive a court ruling. So, our God is a lover of justice, meaning God wants us to live in a right relationship with God. And we do this by how we live in a relationship with each other. Psalm 99 also tells us that when we call on God, He will answer. Unlike the time the Gordons were hosting mud wars at their house. They were in the process of filling in their pool to get rid of it, and they welcomed the youth over for 90 minutes, growing closer to one another and God. As usual, I was brought along and thrown into the mix. When the event had ended, my mom nor dad had remembered that I had gone inside to change clothes. So, they both left the Gordons with my sister and clearly got first dibs on the shower. Guy called her home, but no one picked up. I overheard his message, which included him asking what he should pack me for lunch the next day if I was going to be staying there. Guy was really worried that I was going to be upset when I had learned that no one picked up the phone. But I remembered, this is the best youth group ever. I get to stay here and play video games with the bigger kids. The point maker here is that God does always answer when we call on Him. Bishop Ken Carter also added about this verse that it is a reminder that we often try to do things in our own power, but sometimes we reach the end of our strength and there seems to be no way forward. When we cry out, God answers, not like the solution to a problem, but in the assurance that we will be sustained to take the next step and then the next. We are assured of this when Jesus was on the mountain. Just because my parents forgot me and they didn't answer the phone doesn't mean God doesn't answer prayers. God also has placed me in with a group of people that promised to help care for me from the very beginning. And just like God has shown me faithfulness up to this point, I know that whatever I do and wherever I go, even in college doing dumb things, God will continue to be with me through the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's faithfulness and that's justice. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Malloy Blackstock, and I'm currently a senior at Myers Park. I've been involved in the youth ministry at this church since my family joined when I was in 6th grade. So I've gotten to experience 7 years of participating in various activities here, most of the while strengthening my relationship with God. Now, today is Transfiguration Sunday, and I was oh so lucky to have been chosen by Olivia to speak on it. And we just heard that our gospel lesson today comes from Luke 9:28 through 43. It's fair to say that it's pretty confusing. For historical context, a lot of things happen a few days before this passage takes place. Like, a lot. Jesus feeds the 5,000, Peter declares Jesus as Messiah, and Jesus predicts his own death. In the Transfiguration itself, which, again, is confusing, Peter, James, and John go up onto a mountain with Jesus to pray. Peter and the rest of the disciples don't really know what's going on, but then they see Jesus speaking with the angelic figures of Moses and Elijah. As Peter speaks to them, a cloud with God in it rolls over and basically says, "Listen to Jesus." Then as the cloud dissipates, Moses and Elijah are just gone. To make a group of 4 disciples speechless in wonder shows a lot about what God can do. God sent Moses and Elijah, did this cloud thing, and stunned Jesus' followers just to say, "Listen to my son." This says a lot about what God is willing to do in our lives and how far God will go to open our eyes to his power. Now, this transfiguration reminded me very specifically of one of my own experiences. My love for the outdoors and my faith have always been very interconnected. This summer, I went to a scout ranch in New Mexico with my troop and with my dad. Near the end of our trip, my dad took us deep into the woods to a hidden chapel. And he told us that when he went to Philmont, this was where he first felt the undoubtable presence of God. Now, no God appeared in a cloud-like form and spoke to him in some kind of booming voice, but sometimes you don't need that to feel something definite. While he was opening up about his faith, I too began to feel the presence of God. It's difficult to explain what I felt, and the only way that I could describe it is as some sort of connection. There is something about that hidden, overgrown, wooded chapel in that moment and on that day that changed my perspective. In the second part of our gospel lesson, Jesus comes down from the mountain and meets a man whose son is supposedly seized by a demon. Now, Jesus is able to heal this boy with apparently little effort, whereas the closest people to God on the entire planet, the disciples, weren't able to do anything. Where the disciples failed, Jesus succeeded with basically no effort. This demonstrates the powerful changes that may be brought about simply with the acceptance of God into your life. Now, both the story on top of the mountain and the story of the boy convey the power that God has in our lives. The reader is challenged to go to God, ask God for help, and then to be open to receiving that help. God can silence the most holy and can heal the furthest lost. So you have to just imagine what he can do for you. Throughout our lives, we'll find ourselves in the place of that little boy. There are few people who are able to keep such consistent and powerful faith as not to waver, as not to question God's role and power. Throughout the past few years, given the unpredictability of them, you would be hard-pressed to find a single person that has not yet once doubted. However, we will always have people in our lives that are like the boy's father, people who want the best for us, people who are pushing us towards and challenging us to accept God, even when we aren't sure that that's what we want, because those people know that it's what we need. I myself have struggled, heading towards the ever faster approaching reality of college and life away from my parents, while barely having a grasp on what's happening in the present moment has been difficult. However, to have shared that moment in the woods of New Mexico with my dad reassured me not only of the fact that I can always rely on my parents to guide me, but that I can rest assured in the knowledge of God's presence in my life. Next year, I'm going to Davidson College, and I don't know what to expect, and I know that there will be points during which I waver in my faith. But I do know that I will always have people and places to which I can return that will ground me yet again. Thank you.